So what I'm going to want to do is create a new scene in Houdini. And let me show you how to navigate in Houdini. So or just give you a little rundown on the interface. This is going to be our viewport view. We have our network view panel here. We have our network panel, our view panel, and our parameters panel. And so this viewport panel is just to view the scene. We're going to keep it on this camera view. And so if I left mouse, it's going to toggle, middle mouse is going to pan, and right mouse is going to dolly in and out. So now I'm not going to use any of the tools here, these transform tools that we're used to in Maya. We're not going to use any of these. We're not really going to be manipulating objects in the viewport. We're actually going to be doing it here in the network view. And this network view here, and this is how we end up building models or building scenes in Houdini, is to add nodes to a network, and it becomes really easy to change things, make things variable as you work. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a geometry node. And I hit tab in order to add a node. We have our tab menu here, and then I can start to type. I can go to geometry and find it, or I can hit tab and then just start to type the node that I want. And so we're going to be working what's called a SOP context. And so this is, we're at the object level of our scene. And so I've just dropped in a geometry node, which is a geometry or a SOP network. And I can then double click on this node, and it will bring us into our geometry context here, or our SOPs. So there's nothing in here yet. So what I can do is I can add things like a sphere. And something to know about models in Houdini is that they have a little bit of a different terminology than models in Maya. This is going to be a polygon mesh. What we would call faces in Maya are primitives, edges, and then what we would call vertices in Maya are points. They're in Houdini, they're called points. There are also vertices in Houdini, but we're not going to worry about that. So points, edges, primitives, and polygons. So I have this sphere here. And so now this is a sphere node. I can do something like adding a transform. And once I add this node, I'm going to link it up. I'm going to click on the output. We have an input and an output. I'm going to link up this output to this transform node. And then what we have here on our nodes also are flags. This is our display flag for to view this particular node. If I change that flag down to the visibility flag to this transform, if I go ahead and do something and type a value in our parameter panel here, something like translate in the Y up, then I could still flag this is my original node, and now I can jump down to that second node. Okay, so what I'm going to do though to begin to generate that kind of landscape is I'm going to add a file node here. And this allows me to bring in models like OBJs into Houdini. So let's click on this file node, and right now we just have an empty geometry file node. And so I'm going to go ahead and find what file I want to bring in. And I'm going to bring in, let's just bring in first this leaf object and hit accept. And now I have my leaf in Houdini. This is my first model that I generated in Maya. And what I can do here also is turn off visibility of the UVs here, displaying the UVs. And then I'm also going to change this to like a smooth shaded or a smooth wire shaded. Okay, so I like the way that looks. Now I have my file brought in. So to generate a plant out of one leaf and to make a bunch of different types of plants, what I can do then is I'm going to use this sphere. I'm going to delete this transform node, and I'm going to add a different node. Let's flag. I can also flag here. We can template this and turn off the visibility for this and turn on the visibility for the sphere, so I can still see the templated version of this. I also can bypass this node, which means if I have a long node network, I can ignore it or kind of ignore that particular node. And then I have information on this wheel by clicking this eye, which I don't know if we're going to get into, but there's things like what are the attributes that are associated with this, what are the also some of the just information, general information about this particular node. So I'm going to unclick bypass so I can still see this here in the scene, and I have my sphere. So to isolate, what I'm going to do is I'll show you, and then I'll kind of add more complexity to this. So what we can do to generate a kind of plant from a leaf is we can copy, and what we have here with our sphere, let me turn this off so we're just looking at the sphere, is we have a number of points. Each of those points, right, here are the points to visualize them. If I click here, I can visualize them, and each point has a particular number. So what I can do is I can copy this leaf onto the points of the sphere. So I'm going to add a copy to points node. And this node has two inputs. We have which points are we going to copy to. So the target points are going to be on this sphere. And then what we're going to copy is this leaf. And so if I go ahead and do that, now you see I have this very large plant where every leaf is copied to every point on that sphere. Okay, so that doesn't really look like a plant, although this looks like something. It looks like some kind of botanical for sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my sphere for a moment, and this is how I can make, rather than copy to points on the sphere, what I can do is scatter those points along. I can use a scatter and align node, and we don't see anything here because our parameters are a little bit off. So for my scatter and align, this allows me to algorithmically generate points along my geometry. I'm going to change here in my scatter and align. Let's point cloud method. I'm going to say number of points, and now you can see I have these scatter points along this sphere. If I change the seed, it's going to change the kind of randomness of the position of those points. And I'm going to reduce this to something like 100. And so now with the scatter and align in here, copy to points, now I'm copying to those scatter points, and I can then, change where these leaves are positioned. But this still doesn't look quite right because we are kind of working from, for this, a plant isn't going to have anything like below the surface like this. So what I'm going to drop in is another node, and I'm going to hit tab again, and I'm going to drop in a group node. And what a group node does is it allows us, and I'm going to, if I kind of like hover over this wire here, this connection, I can, it will add it in between. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flag this group node. What the group node does is it allows us to isolate different either points or primitives. Right, so I'm kind of it's a way to select objects, or way to select components on our model. So I can either do points or primitives here, and there's ways that I can set what I'm selecting or what I'm isolating in this group. And so if I go to my primitives here, the group type is primitives, I can go to this primitive number tool here to turn on which numbers the primitives are. Every point and primitive has a number associated with it. And so, for example, if I just want to isolate this one primitive, I can type it here in base group 65, and now I just have that one primitive selected. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this by bounding box, and I'll have this blue bounding box shows up here. I am going, and this is the way I'm going to generate my selection. So I'm going to put the size as 0.5, so it's just half the size, and then I'm going to move up the center of the bounding box to 0.5. And now that looks pretty good, or the center, yeah, or maybe like 0.25, yeah. Now I have that right in the center of my sphere, so I might even want to move it up just a little bit, 0.3, and now I'm just selecting these top primitives, or these top faces on the sphere. So I want to only use this group name here, group 1. I can also say, like, I can name it something like top of sphere, so I know what it is. If I have a lot of groups in my scene, I can identify what they are. And then under the scatter and align tab, I'm going to make sure that I'm plugging in the group name here. So I'm going to find that under my scatter and align tab, I'm going to find that group. And it's showing up because, let's see, that's under primitives, top of sphere, that's the group. And let's go back. We don't have anything selected here. Let's enable this. I don't want this base, I want this bounding region. Go back to my sphere. Okay. And go back to my group. There we are. And so now with scatter and align, let's find Still says no entries. Let's flag this. Top of sphere. Okay, so I think because, okay, I was still flagged in the wrong place. So if I flag my scatter and align, and then under the group, I can go to top of sphere here. And now you see with this group selected, I'm scattering only on that, only within that selection of my sphere in this group. So now I can copy to points, and now I have a little bit of a better plan. Now under the scatter and the line, there's a couple things that I'm going to want to change also in the parameters here. Under attributes, we have something called the point scale, which is being transferred to whatever my copy points are. So the scale of my points are this, for example, like, or just to specify, this leaf here is a lot smaller than this leaf, right? But that's because under the scatter points and the under my scatter and align node, I have this radius attributes turned on. So I'm going to turn that off. So now my sphere and what I'm generating my leaves from, the kind of position that I'm doing that at on that sphere is a lot smaller than the leaves. So we generate something that looks a lot better and a lot more like a plant. So we're getting there. The next thing that I'm going to want to do, and of course now I can go back to my group node and I can just move the center point up and reduce the amount of the kind of the amount of area here on the sphere that I'm generating points from. I can also, in my scatter and align, change the number of points down to something more manageable, like even 10, maybe 20. Yeah. And then the last thing that's going to make this look even more plant-like is to go back to my orientation here and rotate around the normal. So the normal is the kind of direction. I can visualize that here are our normals. If I go to my sphere, right? So the normals are like the direction at which the object is going to be copied to and align with that Y value along the normal. So go back to copy points. I'm going to turn off visualizing normals here. And what I can do is I can rotate around that normal so that we have a kind of random rotation applied to every file that's been copied to the point. So let's turn this up to 360. And now I have a nice kind of plant form, and that's very variable by going back to my scatter and align and changing like the seed number. Okay, so now if I want to bring these objects into Maya as discrete, as separate models, I can do that by first, I'm going to add a file node here, and I can, just like I could read files into my scene in Houdini, I can write files out of Houdini. Before I do this, though, I'm going to add one more node, which is a null. I'm going to connect this up here. And this null is going to be what's called my out. So this is, so I know that this is going to be the last node in my SOP network. SOP, again, being surface operators, another way to say geometry in Houdini. There's chops, ROPs, DOPs, all different dynamic operators, shader operators, render operators, channel operators. So they all have a kind of acronym, which is ops, something with ops. Okay, so I'm going to click on this. This is my null out, and then I'm going to go down to my file. So I want to make sure I have the out flagged so that this is the last thing here when I go to do my write file. So I'm going to say I'm going to write a file, and I'm going to change the name of this, and I'm going to change this to, let's say, demo plant 1, and say accept. And I'm also going to make sure that this is a .obj at the end. You have to really specify here. And now once I flag this, it's going to write that file out to my project folder, which we have the path included here as well. So write that file node, and now I can go back into Maya. Let's generate a new scene. And file, let's import. And this is demo plant 1, and we can import this into Maya. And now I have that original model that I generated in Maya. Now I have it here in as one particular version, I can go back to Houdini and change some of the variables or some of the parameters here. So change the seed, change the total number of points, and then again, and I didn't do this correctly. I should have gone out and then gone here and said demo plant 2 and then write this file. Now I'm going to go back to Maya and file, import, demo plant 2, import, and now I have these two different versions of a plant that has this kind of leaf attached to it. Okay, so we can do many, many versions of this. Also in Maya, if I go to this model here, I can say mesh separate, and this will generate a poly surface for every leaf. And so if there's some that are overlapping or that I want to move, I want to delete them so that this we don't have geometry that's overlapping, I can go in and basically edit whatever was procedurally generated in Houdini. Okay, so go back to Houdini now. That's one way I can, write particular models out. Maybe I'll just do one more. I'm going to flag this null again, go back to my scatter and align, and change the seed value, change the number of points. I can even go in and add a transform node within this part of the network. Let's go back to my file. And with this transform, I'm just going to scale it up to, let's flag the transform, right? So now I have a bit of a different leaf shape. I can go back down to my copy to points and go back to my scatter and align. Let's generate this to be like 30. Now I have, and I can also go back to my group. Let's put this down to 0.3. Okay, so now I have an even, I have a different style of plant very, very easily. Flag my out, go back to my file, back here, demo plant 3, and then flag it, and I'm going to write that out. And then I can go back to my out, go back to Maya, and I can say file, import, and import demo plant 3. And so now I have very, very quickly, I am generating a lot of different models in a procedural way. Okay, so let's now go back to Houdini and let's generate a couple different forms. What I can do here is go back to my object context, and I'm going to take this geometry node and I'm going to duplicate it by just copy and paste it here. So this is this is going to be plant 1. And this one I'm going to rename plant 2. I'm just double clicking over that name. So now I have two different geometry objects, 1 and 2. They look absolutely the same, but if I jump into plant 2 here, since I already have this node network, I'm just kind of copying the entire node network and creating another version of it. So under this file 1 leaf object, instead of reading leaf 1, I'm going to now, let's see, I'm going to double click here. Maybe it's called, let me look at what it's called in my folder, Maya, and I think I exported as tulip leaf. So back to Houdini, and let's just type in tulip leaf underscore leaf. There we are, tulip leaf, and reload geometry. And it's not liking something about that. Okay, tulip leaf obj, leaf obj. Let's delete this last part. So you might get these kind of errors. What you can do if you get the error is to click on this. There's my error, and it's going to tell me it's not able to read it. There's no file, name that. So let's just delete the end of this here, and there we are. I'm going to go back. So now you'll see both of them because both in the scene are flagged for visibility. So let's turn off plant 1 for now, and let's go back into plant 2. So really now I have the same kind of plant, right? It's got the same parameters for my network. However, now I am, so I can bypass this transform. Now this is what it looks like. I can turn this on or off. And but now I have like an entirely new plant, and I have these two different versions of it, one with one set of leaves, one with the other. And I also have the same kind of ability to generate a lot of variable, a lot of variations of the same plant to export as separate models. Okay, so then here I would maybe, I would go in and write this out.